You're listening to the My Simplified Life podcast, and this is episode number 71. Welcome to the My Simplified Life podcast, a place where you will learn that your past and even your present don't define your future. Regardless of what stage of life you're in, I want you to feel inspired and encouraged to pursue your dreams, simplify your life, and start taking action today. I'm your host, Michelle Glogovac, and I'm excited to share my stories and life lessons with you while taking you on my own journey. This is My Simplified Life. Hey friends, welcome back to another episode. I'm your host, Michelle Glogovac. I want you to take a moment and think about all of the people who have affected your life. Maybe you considered them friends, but gained so much knowledge from them, or you turned to them for business advice. These individuals have been your mentors. My guest today is digital marketer, host of the Radiant podcast, and author of What They Taught Me, Kelsey Chapman. What They Taught Me launches today and gives you an inside look at the various women that have helped shape Kelsey's life and given her the wisdom that she has today. She takes you on the journey of what it was like to not only find these women, but how she often approached them when she recognized that their lives were inspiring her in some way. We're talking not only about her book and mentors, but the reality of what it means to be a mentor and not just a mentee. Relationships are a very important part of our lives. As the saying goes, we're a product of the 5 people we surround ourselves with. So shouldn't we be paying extra attention to those influencing our lives? I really enjoyed this conversation with Kelsey since it felt like grabbing a cup of coffee with an old friend, and I know you will too. Hi, Kelsey.
Hi, it is so good to be here with you, Michelle.
I only wish we were in person because you are there's a reason why your podcast is Radiant, because you truly are just like a shining light. I adore you. I love you.
Well, the feeling is mutual, and so I'm so happy to be here with you today.
Thank you. For those who don't know you, can you please take a moment and introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Kelsey, and I am a writer, a digital marketer, a Jill of all trades. I'm sure as we dig into the conversation here, you'll see that I just have always had an array of interests, and I like to figure out how I can weave them all together. I don't often feel like I have to pick, everything in small business says niche down, niche down, niche down, but I'm a bit of a generalist. I know a little bit about something, and that has been really fun for me to apply to my business and to, helping others build out their businesses in this space. I love knowing a little bit about everything, but my sweet spot is digital marketing and platform building. And really, the reason I got into that is because 6 years ago, when I stepped into this kind of online area, I realized, oh my gosh, I want to be a writer, but I don't have a platform. How am I supposed to get my message out into the world? Will a publisher ever pick me up if no one's listening to me? And so I got to work. I started building my platform, and then I realized, I can do this, and I want to tell every friend how to do it for themselves too. And so the rest is history, but my whole journey has been building platforms so that you can get your message out into the world, whether that's for me or for a client. And so the two have gone hand in hand, both my passion for writing and my passion for marketing.
Now, when you knew you wanted to write a book, did you know what you wanted to write on?
Not fully. Some of my favorite authors are, Shauna Niequist or Anne Lamott, and they've always been writers of essays that kind of are compiled under one umbrella into a theme of a book. And so I knew I would write in that vein, but I didn't exactly know what. For as far back as I can remember, I would write these essays even before I knew those authors. Even in high school, I'd write essays that I didn't know stylistically there were books of essays at the time. And I would think I was writing the most profound piece on ants and how they carry so much on their back. And I thought it was just, the best writing to ever grace God's green earth. And I now laugh at myself and I'm like, I need to be kind to my younger self, but that is painful to look at. But I always thought, okay, I'll write kind of a collection of stories that fall under one theme. And when I got my first story down on paper a few years ago for this concept, I was like, oh, I have so many more stories under this umbrella of mentorship. And I've had women invest in me and I can't help but tell about it. And it's only natural for me to share these stories because I talk about their impact in my life all the time. So this feels exactly what was supposed to come out of me for this first book.
So let's talk about the book, about your mentors. I love the theme because it took me reading the book to really realize all of the mentors that I've had in my life, because I've just considered so many as just friends, especially older women that have been in my life. And it was just, oh, well, she taught me how to knit and, we would have good conversation and we were knitting. But in reality, I was learning some life lessons and, this person was a mentor and this person was. So how did you come about the book? How did you identify these mentors that you put in the book? I want to hear it all.
Man, so for me, I'll go into how did I identify them first. I started that first chapter and was like, let me just see what comes out. I think I know a story I want to tell, and let me see if I can bake that into some tangibles because, I can think of the mentors I've had, but I hadn't done the work of fleshing out exactly what they taught me and why they were in my life. I just knew they were impactful to me. But I started writing about Linnell, and she's who chapter 1 is all about. And I started writing about, man, she was really sacrificial in her love for me. And that taught me a lot. She did not have to love me. It was inconvenient for her to love me. She was engaged to my dad, and then they went their separate ways, and he met my mom and she met her husband, and the rest is history. But then I walk into her life as her daughter's best friend in preschool, really just a few years later, and how inconvenient. Like, I would not want to do weekend drop-offs and sleepovers with my college sweetheart. No, thank you. And so I just thought about, wow, she's one of the most pivotal people in my life. And that is the most unlikely person for that role. And yet she was there. She was there when I hurt her children. We were going through the growing pains of being teenagers. So sometimes I was, the judgmental friend or the holier than thou friend, and really hurtful to her daughter sometimes. And she still loved me. And she would call me out if needed and say, hey, that was mean. But she was constantly present in a role that she did not have to be, And so I started writing about her. And then I was like, well, I have these other mentors. Like, there's these other women who were in my life. What did they teach me? And so I just started teasing out, the stories that went along with each mentor. And I'm like, wow, I thought the lessons were kind of intangible, like soft skills per se. But as I sit here and look at them on paper, they taught me really significant lessons. And I think if we all asked for someone to step into our lives and offer their wisdom, we might shortcut the distance to our success and go a bit further than we ever planned, on the road of our dreams. And so I feel like the lessons my mentors taught me took lessons that I might have spent 5 years learning and boiled them down into 1 year. And it just propelled me forward in a way with a lot less resistance. Now, I certainly had to learn other lessons the really long, hard way, but the ones they taught me, it shortcut my process learning them. And so I just kind of thought, man, if I could do that for other people and we create this movement of women investing in women or men investing in men or men investing in women, whatever, people investing in one another, we'd all go further together.
Yeah, I've got 2 questions along that line, but one is, how did your mom feel about this? Because I think if my kid was going down the street to my husband's ex-fiance,
yeah,
I'd be like, yeah, no, this isn't going to work for us.
Totally. I really wrestled in writing the book with my mom feeling like left out because it's dedicated to her. I tie it up at the end too, like, And I've told her throughout the process, hey, like no voice has been more important than yours. I'm really highlighting, the purpose of the book is to look around your sphere of influence and see who can invest in you. And so that's not your mom, that can be another voice in your life. And it taught me a lot about being open-handed with my children, to let other voices come in and guide them on their journey. And yeah, I'll keep my eyes out and make sure no one is offering them bad input. But for the most part, like, oh, it's not all on me. Like other voices will come alongside my daughter to support her in her journey. And so I really was worried, like, I don't want to hurt my mom. This would be the most painful thing to put this out into the world and think it's, my life work to boil down into a message of like, I really believe in mentorship and women investing in women and looking around for that lady down the street and offering to help her fold laundry just so you could sit with her and talk to her and learn from her. I really wanted to normalize this mentoring process, but not at the expense of hurting my mom. And so that was really painful to consider, but she received it pretty well and loves the book. I think she just bought 10 copies. But her and Linnell, I think, buried the hatchet so long ago. Before I even walked into Linnell's life as her daughter's best friend, my parents lived 7 houses down the street from each other and like kind of the neighborhood everyone was moving to in their, time. And so I think they'd already had to run into each other a bit. And I think they were just kind of like, hey, we both ended up with who we were meant to. I mean, I think Linnell ended up getting the good end of the deal because she's still married. So I love both of my parents. They're not married. So it worked out for Linnell. But I think they buried that hatchet and really enjoyed each other over the years. They still check in, like, how's your mom doing? How's Linnell doing? And it's been a sweet picture for me too, of like water under the bridge and forgiveness and moving forward and not letting bitterness eat you up, because they certainly both had every right to be bitter.
Sure. Yeah. And that's why I asked, because I don't know how I would feel. But I think that's also part of growing up and, maturing as a person.
Totally. And I think for my mom, watching someone love your kid in a way that's different than how you love them is vulnerable. But at the end of the day, if you see your kid thriving because of it, you can't help but want to celebrate and appreciate it. And so I think it's been this kind of sweet little blended family vibe, It's very unique and different, but here we are.
Yeah. How do you... So after reading the book and looking at who my mentors are, who can I mentor and have as a mentee, I actually came across in a Facebook group a woman in PR who said, my goal this year is to take on more people to mentor women in PR, reach out to me. And I was like, that sounds great, because she's, ultimately doing what I want to do. And so I started formulating the email and I felt like a teenager going, will you take me on? Will you help me, please? It was kind of the weirdest, oddest feeling. And you kept popping into my brain of like, just do it. Just ask. So I sent it. She hasn't responded. But how do you tell others to go about, asking someone to mentor you? Because there is that fine line of, I want to pick your brain, that sort of a thing. I just read another book where the woman goes, don't offer to buy me lunch because I'm successful enough that I don't need you to buy me lunch. So, don't say that you want to buy me lunch in order to get my advice or wisdom or whatever, because it's almost like a slap in the face. So I feel like, how do you balance that? How do you make it appropriate?
Yeah, man, half the time my advice is buy someone lunch. So I think it is reading the room. If you know that person has said that, then don't use that language. Or if you know that, if someone's read my book and saw where I said, don't ask to pick my brain, don't say that to me, whereas someone doesn't mind that phrase. And so kind of knowing that about who you're asking. And I think it's much more common in life mentors or corporate to buy lunch to get advice from them. Whereas maybe an online business, it might be paying for their program and paying to work with them. And so really knowing the area you're looking for expertise in what's fitting. Maybe it's the mom down the street and she doesn't want lunch and she surely can't get a coffee at 10 a.m. She needs you to come over and fold laundry with her and just learn from her while she's already doing her life stuff, or she might want to sit with you at the end of a night after you babysat for her and sit around the table for 20 minutes and pass along her wisdom. Getting mentorship from a mom with toddlers, you're probably squeezing it in when you can get it in. Whereas getting mentorship from someone in your corporate career might look like, I'd love to meet with you once a quarter. Can I take you to lunch and pay for it? And I'll come with my 3 questions. And so really reading the room of where that mentor you want to learn from is at and what kind of capacity they have. And then again, knowing, are they going to be offended by me offering to pay for their lunch? What's something else I can do for them? Or do I just need to pay for their mentorship? And I think people are turned off by the idea of paying for a mentor because it feels transactional and less feel-goody per se.
Mm-hmm.
But I would argue the difference, you're blocking off their time so that they're able to be even more intentional with you when you pay for their mentorship. And so, no matter what, I encourage you to just put yourself out there and ask. It doesn't have to be super formal on that first hangout. I joke all the time, like, you don't want to be the girl who's talking about babies on the first date. Like, you don't have to be like, hey, will you be my life mentor? Let me take you to coffee. It's like, whoa, you came on too strong. Can you just ask to take me to coffee?
Yeah.
So, just ease in. And if that first coffee day or that first virtual Zoom or that first walk felt good, do it again and again. And then maybe you call it a mentor relationship down the road. I think both of my business mentors, I didn't refer to them as a mentor for probably the first 2 years of knowing them, because more so they were my coach. And then we bypassed that role and went a little bit deeper to where I'm like, oh, you're stuck with me forever. And they say the same thing to me. So I'm not some stage 5 clinger, and I would love for this to be like an ongoing relationship, but I'm also not expecting you to just be available to me every second,
Yeah. I feel like the life mentorship is more of a friendship relationship, versus a business one. You want to have that relationship, but there is something that's just a little bit different about it because you don't really get as personal.
Totally. And I did specifically pick business mentors that I could get personal with. Like, I'd say mine tend to be on the relational side. They're not as formal as they could be, but I do think that it can take a more formal shape than a life mentor, and a life mentor does feel a little more like a friend.
Can we talk about, on the business side, mentors, and you and I talked a little bit about this offline. How do you, as the mentor, because I'm sure you have a plethora of people who would love to get your insight, get your input, have your mentorship. How do you make sure that they don't just take what you do and what you say and then make it their own?
Yeah, we were talking about this recently because it's bound to happen, And so I think the reality is no one can do what you do quite like you do it. I've had someone sit and read someone else's mastermind description to me on a discovery call and say, this person's mastermind, it was between you and this one, but I really connect with you more. And I'm like, really? That person is 400 times more famous than me, so they seem naturally more credible just because of their numbers alone. I'm shocked that you'd want to work with me over them because of my essence, even though we're offering something pretty similar and they are more recognized for that offer. And that example was a really good reminder to me of it doesn't matter that we have the same offer. It doesn't matter that they're more credible than me from a numbers standpoint and a audience size. What matters is my essence and how I show up in the world spoke to her. And I think that really encourages me to keep that abundance mindset and trust that, I could let someone in, they could totally rip my services off. But if it's not their passion either, and they just wanted quick money because they saw a business model that worked, so they replicated mine, they're probably not going to carry it for the long haul anyway. So back when I ran an Instagram agency, I had people I'd teach how to grow their Instagram account. Then they go turn around and teach it, and they're my friends. And I'm like, man, they just know I make some decent money doing this. And now they're charging for my services. But then they do it for like 2 months. And I'm like, yeah, like that wasn't their dream. So they don't have the passion to carry it sustainably and with longevity. And so usually that stuff also just falls to the wayside, but it doesn't mean it doesn't hurt, because you let people in, it's vulnerable, you give them everything you know, and they were not generous in return. They were a taker in return. And that is hurtful. But I think I did not mean to rhyme with this, but I think the reward of connection is worth the risk of rejection. And so you're going to have those painful moments where either someone's not a fit or they hurt you because they were transactional and took from you. But when you do have those special relationships that stand the test of time, you're like, man, this was worth it. Like I'm so thankful I put myself out there either as a mentor or a mentee, because this is such a special relationship.
You know that quote's going to be a graphic for the episode. Yeah, I totally agree. And I think for me, it goes even beyond working closely with someone. Like even what I put on my Instagram, I'm a little cautious of, how much do you really show that this is what I'm doing? Because I don't want to give away, all of my secrets. And an example of that would be that I decided, I feel like I'm late to the game in this, but creating welcome boxes for my clients. And I took all of December putting this together, designing it, placing orders and everything. And finally, the box itself arrived yesterday, and I was so excited to put them together. And I started doing a little bitty video on Instagram, and I'm like, but I don't want to show everyone everything that's in it, because I don't want someone to take my ideas and make it their own.
Yeah, I know. It is possible, but the likeliness of them having your exact business, using every single item in your welcome box is so unlikely. And if they do it, I think their likelihood of longevity is also slim, because ripping off someone else's business model and all of their systems is not going to carry them for the long haul at all.
Yeah. And it takes a learning curve to do exactly what others do.
Yeah.
So we've talked about the mentee. So that's how you protect yourself. You put yourself out there.
Totally.
I love it. And so, how do you go about, I feel like in the online space, there's a lot of fakeness. There's a lot of, this is who I am, this is what I do, this is how much money I make. And in reality, it's BS.
Yeah.
So how do you go about finding the right mentor? Because I feel like I could look at different accounts per se and think, this person seems so genuine and so wonderful. And, I can look at you. You've got over 64,000 Instagram followers. You appear online to be this genuine, kind person. And I email you and you are exactly that. You are the epitome of sweetness and kindness and generous. And you don't always find that. So how do you weed that out to find the right mentor? Obviously you have to get to know them, but how do you do that?
Yeah, I think for me, I'm super intuitive. So I'm going to answer this a few different ways. For the intuitive people out there, it's a lot about how you feel when you're around someone, and maybe they're an online mentor, but how you feel when you read through their website, and how you feel when you watch their Instagram stories, and how you feel when you see them engage with their people. Both of my mentors in business specifically, I was looking for someone with aligned values outside of work. Like, yeah, I wanted to scale my business to be a multi-6-figure business, if not 7-figure business, but I also didn't want to martyr my family on the altar of success. So I specifically looked for mentors who built a business that accommodated their lifestyle being a mom, that did not make them work 12 hours a day to have what they have. And while there is a level of hustle that's necessary at the beginning, I worked those 12-hour days. I knew I don't want to be doing this for the next 20 years if that's what it's going to take, because I might as well go get a day job and leave my work at 5, And so I looked for mentors who could help me fast track my way to those values being baked into my business. And there were certainly other mentors out there who promise you to make 6 figures overnight if you just implement their strategy or whatever. There's a lot of different types of personalities for online mentors and business specifically where I was looking. And I just had to say, those are great people, but I don't know if running at that pace is going to build the life I want. It might build the success level I want, but success is not only money for me, it's also lifestyle. And so I specifically looked for mentors that had values aligned with mine. And then I paid attention to how I felt when I interacted with their content. Like I felt a lot of peace interacting with anything they had out on the internet, by the way they talk, the way they interview people in their podcasts, like all of that. Now, if you're not intuitive and you're like, okay, I don't make decisions off of how I feel, I totally get that. But you can still wade through someone's content and say, okay, like most people put almost everything they do out there for free anyways. It's just in bits and pieces and you'd have to marry it all together to get the full picture. So just wade through their content and say, okay, like, for instance, Gary Vee, amazing Instagram mentor, but his $1.80 method is going to tell me to be on Instagram 90 minutes a day. That's probably not something I have capacity for in this season of life. So are the strategies that this mentor is teaching yielding the life I want to build? Like when rubber meets the road, is what they teach me aligned with how I want to spend my day? Yes or no? Okay, move forward or don't, And so I think there's some really practical approaches, even if you're not a feeler and saying, oh, I feel so peaceful when I'm in their presence. I think you can still measure, like, will what that person passes down to me? I'm like, my grammar's a little off there.
It's still early in the morning.
Build the life I want to build.
I love that. And I think that for me, coming from the corporate world, I wasn't a feeler. And now I have feelings in my gut and I've learned to really embrace them. And it took a while because I've been in this space this is my 3rd year. And before I'd get that feeling in the gut and I'd ignore. And now I'm like, oh, no. My gut says something, so I got to go with it. And it's always right. It's been right. It's really served me well. So if you're not an intuitive person, I think you can become one if you really want to be one.
Yeah. And I think you honor your gut in little nudges along the way, and then you start to be able to trust it in the big things. But it's like little muscle that you have to, work and grow. And so I used to bypass my gut all the time until I learned the real long, hard way. And I will not do that again. And I think every freelancer has that story.
Yeah, I think we do. Oh, I love it. You make me happy. Like I didn't need to drink my coffee this morning.
Well, again, the feeling is mutual, Michelle. I could talk to you all day long. And it's just fun to just think through who impacted us. How can we do that for others? Here's our stories of where I feel a little bit scarred from stepping into the role of a mentor. Like that's very relatable for anyone listening in and honestly bound to happen. You can't be in a marriage and expect to never get hurt if you're going to be married for 60 years. You can't be in a friendship that's deep and meaningful and expect to never get hurt if you're going to be friends with longevity. And so I think the same as mentoring relationships. And I wish that wasn't the case, but put yourself out there, man. It's vulnerable.
And we're all human. So we make mistakes and others do, and we learn from them.
Totally.
Can you please share with everyone where they can find your new book? Because it's out today.
It is. It is out anywhere books are sold, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Target, all the places. And it would be a joy to me if you picked it up.
To share the title too.
Oh, what they taught me. Hello. Recognizing the mentors who will take you from dream to done.
And it is a good read. It's a great read. You can see all of my reviews that are everywhere now because of it.
Oh, I'm so thankful.
I am thankful. Thank you so much, Kelsey, for coming on and sharing yourself with me and the rest of the world. I really appreciate you.
Thank you for having me.
Have you been reflecting on the mentors in your life after listening to Kelsey and I? Are you thinking about how you can be a mentor to others? I really think it's important to not only realize and recognize those making an impact on your life, but to think about how you can make an impact on someone else's life. You might already be doing it and not even realizing it. Go grab your copy of What They Taught Me Today, and if you don't already have one, find a mentor. Be a mentor, because it will change your life. Until next week, my friends, stay safe, stay healthy, and stay happy.